Hello, this is Alan G. Davison, and at the request of Anime 22KX, I have decided to do a small portion for writing tips. Now, mind you, if you haven't found out or haven't looked at any of my other stuff, you would realize that I recently self-published a book. It's got some problems with it, but I consider myself decent enough at the art of telling a good story, then I could share a couple of tips. What makes me qualified? That's probably not what you're asking, but if you're still here, I might as well tell you a little bit. I honestly didn't get right into writing my own stories until about 2 years ago, but before that I did a lot of reading and writing on fan fiction, mostly reading, but I figured a lot of things in terms of story structure and how things really worked out. In fact, a lot of my action scenes came from different fan fictions that I actually read. No, I didn't copy anything, but that's where the prime bulk of my inspiration for it came, since I have no abilities outside of what little capabilities I have with writing for any type of drawing or any other type of media outside of it. So I was severely limited in what I could do in terms of scope, so I had to work with what I had, more or less, which, if there's any advice I can give you, it's write what you know and work with what you have. I have to admit, I've been doing a little bit of work on the second book, in the sense that I finished the manuscript, but I found that during preparation for the third book, this is going to be a series, mind you, that carrying around like a small notebook, or like what I've done is I've gotten like some index cards all, twist together with some metal frame and stuff like that, and I carried it around with a pen, and I found that you find inspiration at the oddest times and places, and my work at McDonald's sucks, mind you, but it really does allow your mind to wander, and it's good to have a piece of paper and a pen at all times when you're just doing other things. I think it's called the Eureka theory or something like that, whereas if you leave something alone, you'll find your answers. Well, similar principle, only good idea to carry that around. I mean, I've filled up quite a few cards on this thing just for overall story ideas. So, another good tip is, if you ever get to a point in a story where you find that your original ideas for a certain scene don't work out, keep it anyway. Always keep all of your old ideas chronicalized somewhere, even if you don't use them, because you never know if you can actually go back and use that same similar event later on in the story, or maybe even you could just go back into the story itself. Another good idea. I published my first book relatively quickly, mainly because I was impatient and I really wanted to get it out. But in the end, it sort of hampered me a little bit because I didn't have enough people actually read it. And mind you, I had quite a few people read it, but they mostly just told me it was good, it was good, it was good. Yep, friends are kind of funny like that. Anyway, some people actually continue to bring up little things and stuff like that I sort of should have seen in hindsight and in foresight, to be honest. But you never ever push something out too much, and always try to find someone who doesn't like your work. Easier said than done, trust me. It took until after I published the book in the first place before I found anyone willing to really critique anything. But that's always a good idea, is to try and find someone who doesn't like your work, so they will be much more willing to criticize and, insult you. Now, as heartless as that actually seems, is to putting up your baby and all your hard work in front of somebody else just so they can, tear it apart like a heartless critic. I'm not getting any bad memories or anything, I swear. You really do need someone who doesn't like it, or someone with a bit more of an open mind, because more often than not, I find myself, when I read my own work, I have no problems with it, which is why I'm such a lousy editor for my own work. But for some reason, I can go on the internet and just, find problems frickin' galore with anybody else's. Yeah, I don't really criticize anybody, but, you see them, they're there. It's not difficult to find a fan fiction with errors in it, trust me. Mine are probably a frickin' example, dictionary worth anyway. So, anyway, that's actually a good idea, is to find someone who doesn't really like your work too much, but is willing to actually stick around and read it. there's a trick for you. If you can figure that one out, let me know how that goes. Outside of that, I start off with any like story as that I did it this way. I'm not really sure how most authors, actually write fiction in the same manner I do, but I started off with my characters first. I started off with a simple premise, something that wasn't too complicated. Keep it simple, stupid. That's how it works. And after that, I created like the basic plot, the basic area in my head, and then I decided to create the characters. If there was one thing that I always enjoyed about any type of story, any type of medium, it's the characters gotta be interesting, not always likable, but interesting and good. And that's where I started off, that's how I actually started my first book, is that I wrote the characters first. Now, mind you, I had some help, since the characters were based off of people who, helped me come up with the idea in the first place. I just completely and totally took over after, like, the third chapter or something like that. After that, they really just sort of had a backseat, they gave me opinions and stuff like that, but I did all of the writing after that. So, yeah, that's the way I prefer to work. And I actually think it's a good idea to work with your characters first beforehand and really peg what you want that type of person to be. Since you don't want characters acting out of character. I mean, when you're first starting off, it's understandable, but if you want to write something that's going to be very long, kind of like maybe the Harry Potter novels or something like that, it's always a good idea to peg down your characters pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. That's what I did. If you want to go out my route, like I said, I'm not a very successful author to begin with, so if you want to take my advice, you're probably still listening to me. That was kind of pointless to say, but, always good to let people know that this is your opinion, and you don't really want anybody, going into something like that headlong, thinking that they're going to get all the answers in the world. Outside of that, I took a bit more of a fan fiction approach to actually writing my chapters, is that each chapter was thought up like on the fly. I really didn't put a whole lot of forethought into the basic runnings of the actual chapters themselves. I would sort of just get an itch as to what this individual would do in the current situation that he's in. So, like, after the okay. Example, no more ums. No more ums. I hate ums. After the incident at the very beginning of the story, God damn it. Sorry. Anyway, the main, one of the main heroes ends up, heading forward. They gathered water supplies, which was a good idea. They marked out a path to take, and they planned for anything, and they moved on. That's what I would do in a situation like that. And that's what I think that type of person would do in that situation. So, more often than not, the driving plot behind my actual plots were the characters themselves and what I feel they would do in that situation. So, mind you, some of the characters might not be as heroic as they normally would. I honestly hope that it brings some realism into the actual story itself. Alrighty. I have to admit, outside of that, I'm kind of at a loss for what type of critiques or tips I can actually give to an individual. Here's an interesting one, and probably a very simple one. Always keep track of all of your chapters as close as you possibly can. I had a recent incident for the second book where I ended up writing the full chapter, but I ended up losing it. Somehow I lost part of the dang chapter, and I ended up having to rewrite the whole dang thing. Now, mind you, that did have its own benefits with, I didn't feel very comfortable with the second book. I'm still not very comfortable with it. It doesn't feel as good as the first one. Even if the first one had its flaws, it felt like a good, solid story. So, I'm still having people looking at that right now. I learned my lesson from the first one. There is no way I'm rushing through this one again. Alrighty. Let's see here. Another tip. Wow, I really should have planned this out. Well, this is what happens when you go unscripted. You never know what's going to happen. I'm looking around right now. I really don't see anything happening. Dang it. That's what happens when you're alone in the house. Nothing exciting ever happens. Heck, even when you're not alone in the house, nothing ever exciting happens. Damn it! Oh well. Other tips that I can come up with is always create a character bio. This came from a friend of mine, but I took it to heart relatively quickly and relatively well. If there's anything that can keep track of ear tabs on even the most minor of characters, it's a good idea. I have, if you were to look on my laptop, you would see, like, just files upon files of maybe 1 or 2 page biographies of, simple characters. Every single character I have in the first book actually has a biography, as well as any plans or thoughts I have for said character at the time of writing said biography. I also have, like, a whole list on the actual